Hello, and welcome to this episode of Fargonauts. I'm Tyler, and I'm joined here with my Fremen brothers here. We are all hopped up on our spice, and we're here to discuss Dune Part 2. So we're just going to talk about the film for the most part, I would say. So yeah, you guys just jump in. If everybody, likes us talking about films, recent media, let us know in the comments. Maybe hit us up with your ideas if you like the film, or if you want to see other things, topics we could discuss. Since we're doing a David Lynch watch through of Twin Peaks, we could definitely talk about the David Lynch Dune, or even the Jodorowsky Dune. Awaken that sleeper inside yourself, and hit that like button. Thanks so much, and let's get into the discussion, guys. What are your thoughts? Hold on.
I really enjoyed it.
Can you say that?
And
Can you say that again? Sorry, I didn't have you guys recorded, so hopefully that
well,
I just had
It's just
a
Tyler talking to
talk
himself
with
up until
myself.
now.
Yeah, so now my guys are here.
Now,
yes,
up until now, you've
the
been
quiz
just
that's interactive, a bit
experiencing.
alike.
Hopefully, I
Up,
can
up
edit
until
most
now,
of that in.
up until now, you've been experiencing a vision due to the geriatric spice melange.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Um,
what I was saying was that my boss said something today because he saw it this weekend too, and felt the same way. Where it's like really enjoyed it. Don't really have much of anything bad to say at all, but it didn't feel like some special moment to me, like they're kind of saying it is. You know what I mean?
okay.
You get what I'm saying?
I think,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I think that a lot of people are saying things
Beautiful
because
movie, really well done. Everything's cool, but it's not like it's not like the first time I saw Star Wars or something. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I
Different.
could, yeah, I could take that and kind of speculate or discuss that a little bit more because it is not one of those like defining films
No,
like a Star Wars. Like nobody has ever seen anything like Star Wars before Star Wars
right.
came out, right?
Which
So
there, Star Wars pilfered a lot from Dune.
yeah, exactly. It pilfered a lot from many different things, and we've discussed
Oh
that
yeah.
ad nauseum. But you know, to me, it wasn't that. Yeah, the spectacle of Dune Part Two, and I guess these two films. The
Hmm.
first one was kind of lacking a lot because you knew it was going to have to end, and that like you want to know
Right.
what's going to happen to these characters, and
I think what we got in that one was good, but yeah, the way
yeah. But when you're on the other
it
side of
ended
it,
was weird. But
when you're on
it
the
kind
other
of had
side
to.
of it, like it kind of looks better in retrospect.
Right.
yeah.
'Cause I
When
just
this one's held up with it, but like when you
yeah,
watch the first
I
Star
just
Wars, it had a definitive ending. They get medals, and
right.
there's like a pomp and like a finality to that episode. But you
Well,
knew that this one's coming
that
next.
also was very much not the time of like
They weren't
knowing that
sure a sequel was going
franchises
to
were
happen.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, where this one was purposely built from a pre-existing story that they knew they were chopping up in two, right?
Hmm.
So there's some difference there, but
But I could
um,
see what your boss was kind of getting at.
yeah.
It didn't maybe like to me. Dune.
But like we were saying, we both like really enjoyed it. Like
Oh
I
yeah,
I really enjoyed it. It just it's it's weird looking at some of that stuff where people are like, it's this movie of a generation or the whatever, and I was just like, I mean, it's really good, but I don't know if
I
I
think
feel
I
that way.
think part of what is coming out in that light is more talking about it in the way of like it has been it is something that is like speaks more to like the gestalt, or I don't know, like you, because we had like the Avatar last year. We've had
Yeah.
big movies so far in 2020s, but we haven't had like,
We haven't had a really big, super good movie in a while.
or we haven't had a series that has consistently been good. Like we've had
Right.
movies that have been like good, but maybe not in a series where all of them have come out and been reviewed as well as each other or been like building on their own success.
especially within the last couple years.
Yeah, so I think
During
people
and
are just
post Pandy, it's been a while.
I think people are just more talking about it in like this is a success like financially, critically,
Right.
commercially, like audiences like it. Like it is just
Something we haven't had for a long time.
without
yeah.
spectacle around the stars or
Right.
the making of or like this some huge aspect of it.
Right.
But
And
it is
yeah,
taking that property of Dune that's been around in the
Mhm.
the pop culture for a long time.
60 years.
So and
1965.
the fact that a lot of people say it's the unfilmable book or the unadaptable
Right.
kind of thing in medium, and seeing it executed, like there is a way you can do it.
Yep.
yeah,
And people have done it. People have done it in audiobooks and audio plays and things like that, or done versions of it on like a series, like a mini series on Sci-Fi. Wilson and I talked about
Yep.
that briefly. And yeah, obviously David Lynch and Jodorowsky wanted to do their version of it. So
Mhm.
they're all legit, but it's like I don't think the studios maybe see it as like, oh, that's a financial burden. It's unfilmable, huh?
Right.
Like there's a lot of spectacle and a lot of nonsense that is in the book, like things that,
Yeah.
would exist in a strange world, right? So making that digestible to an audience may be kind of hesitant for a lot of studios, like, oh, I don't know, guys, this is kind of awkward
that's
and weird.
that's the other thing is that like this is a for a sci-fi story like it is kind of heady in a lot of the aspects that it gets into, and to make it so digestible for a very large audience to wrap their heads
Right.
around like a Bene Gesserit and them breeding a Kwisatz Haderach and the
Uh,
idea, yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to
it's
cut
just
in.
clear it's like yeah, you can do this story, but it really really depends on what you want to focus on. Is it going to be Paul and how he feels about things and like his journey from being young little boy going through like the John Campbell hero's journey and like
Yep.
becoming a learned grizzled war hero who's like psychic, or is it going to be more about like the social aspects of like the differences between Fremen and Harkonnen and how that interplays? Like there's so many different things you could focus on.
And
Yeah.
I think that speaks to the strength of Denny Villeneuve's like way of adapting it, like how he was able to focus on certain things. Like one of the things that we kind of lost in this adaptation were the Mentats, right?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't really get much of them. Peter DeVries or whatever dies like in the first movie, even though he's hangs around. He's in the Baron's ear quite a bit. And then like what's his name? Thufir? Fucking
Thufir.
the one
Howat,
for
Thufir
yeah.
Howat.
yeah. He was he was in the first movie, but he got cut from this one.
Also, speaking of which, the other day, like maybe it was today or yesterday, I saw an article about Tim Blake Nelson like
Yep.
filmed a scene for this movie that got cut,
Yep.
and I was like,
Yep.
"Fucking, we missed out on TVN."
There was some
Mhm.
speculation as to who he was, but I forget. Um,
They were speculating that it was Count Fenring because when
yeah. Yeah.
what is her name? Something Seydoux.
Leah Sadu?
I always want to say Amanda Seydoux for some reason, but that's not it.
That's Amanda Seyfried, maybe you're thinking of.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's probably I mix things up like that all the time in my head. But like she pops up randomly in my opinion. I mean it makes sense when you know who it is, but like it is kind of out of nowhere. You're like, okay, this is the new character coming in fucking end of the seventh inning. But she like pops up as what the fuck is her name?
She's
Martha.
she's a
She's like
Fenring.
it's something Fenring. Yeah, she's his wife.
I think it's Margot or something like that.
And she's there basically as she is a Bene Gesserit, and she's going to
Oh, yeah.
be sleeping with Fade Routha to
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
carry
Yep.
on his bloodline because he's like
Yeah.
another.
They want him to replace Paul essentially.
Well, he's like another. He's another part of the. It could either be Paul or it could be
Yeah.
Fade Rotha, who like might turn out to be the Kwisatz Haderach. They're not sure.
Well, yeah, they want to be able to control the person. They know they can't control Paul, so they're
Yep.
thinking they could get Fade.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously that fucking Austin Butler as Fade Ralph was pretty fun too.
Yeah, that was good.
Played a good Psycho.
I really liked the stuff on Gady Prime, just being like
Yeah.
that they intentionally went for something visually different. I liked that.
Yep.
It seemed
Yep.
like how it's depicted in the book or how it's described is like very harsh, very industrial, very just
Yep.
raw and like violent. Like in all respects, like you live violently there. Everything is
Yeah.
maybe loud and even they're like,
Harsh lighting.
yeah, I would imagine them sleeping violently too, just like
thrashing about, sweating.
yeah, and like how it was depicted, like, and how they shot it. They shot it in infrared, and that's what made everybody's hands and skin like translucent and like almost
And their
glow.
eyes and mouths black.
Yes, they're like they do have teeth, but they
Yeah.
were black because it was infrared. And Denis has done that. He's taken chances on like telling his directors of photography to do something that's out of their wheelhouse. Like in Sicario, he said like, "Hey, Roger Deakins, how about you shoot this in night vision?" And, you know, like in that scene where the sun was going down
Can you
and
imagine
those
telling
guys were
Deakins
just
what to do?
well, maybe it was like a collaborative thing, but I just imagine like Denis was like, you know what? I'm gonna have you shoot this in night vision. And like there was like the whole thing was like that sequence was like the sun was going down, and as the sun went down, they switched on like a night vision. You could see that kind of grainy green, you know, look to it, and
Yeah.
taking those chances was kind of cool, and like sticking to it, and like Gady Prime being shot in infrared makes sense because how it's described is that it's so close to a star that it kind of like
Yeah.
it
Black
has,
sun.
yeah, the black
I
sun
love
kind
that.
of makes it that, and even like their fireworks are just flashes of black ink blots that like pop mark the sky, and like even that looks violent. Like it doesn't look pretty. It's like not until like they're celebrating his birthday, which is weird because they're celebrating it by being violent and having him kill people in a gladiator tournament thing. And then when he's like walking through the corridors of his palace, I assume like you can see flashes of like whatever residual fireworks or some kind of storm, but I think it's more fireworks, and it's just like those fireworks are just flashing lights constantly, like keeping people awake, and like seems
that
so
was
harsh.
that was one thing I really enjoyed about this duology was like the amount of design that went into the ships and the environments and the buildings and all of the things that made this like world into more than just our normal world was so well done. Like in the first movie, that shot of the what is called like a guild highliner. It's like when they leave Caladan and they go to Arrakis for the first time. They like it's a bunch of shots of like smaller ships getting into this much bigger ship that kind of looks like a whale shark.
Oh yeah, the way to
And just a
transport
sense
between
of scale, you're
yeah.
like, my god. And then when the ships are landing and all the armies are on the surface and you just see this like sprawling mass of people, and then with how big the ships are compared to that number of people, you're like, oh, Jesus fuck. And
Right.
interiors and there, yeah, like you're saying, like when Austin Butler was walking through these hallways, I was like, man, I'm so glad that somebody out there really enjoyed their job and got to design this wonderful interior that we get to look at, because it was just awesome.
Yeah, they did a good job with the different worlds, I guess, in this film. There wasn't a lot of world exploration in the first film. It was just like, hey, let's check out Arrakis and how crazy it is.
I did like that we got like plenty of time on Caladan though,
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that to me felt like their architecture and the design of everything made it feel like they were specifically trying to harken back to being like medieval. Like their fortress, whatever you would call it on Caladan, felt like it was like they built it as if to be like, oh, this was built by Daedalus, and there's a fucking minotaur deep within the bowels of this place.
Right.
Right. Yeah. They.
We did get to see a little bit of Salusa Secunda, the planet where they train the Sardaukar in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, oh god, I fucking am blanking hard on the name of the planet that the Emperor lives on, but we got to see that in with him and Florence
Christopher
Pugh.
Walken.
Yeah, in this
Oh,
movie.
Chrissy walks, dude.
Chrissy, he walks.
He walks with rhythm.
No, he walks without rhythm.
Well, if you don't walk with a rhythm, you won't attract the worm from his Fatboy Slim song.
Yep. You must walk without rhythm.
True. How'd you guys feel about old Atreides, old Muad'Dib,
I
old
liked him.
Nisa Al
Okay.
Gaid?
Oh, you mean Usul?
Usul?
Usul, dude?
I'll just say,
You mean Usul? Paul Muad'Dib Usul?
up until a point, I was still hesitant about him, but once he drank from the water of life, I was like,
Yep.
I'm all in with this guy.
Yeah.
I
I
was
had a
gonna say,
very,
as soon
very
as-
similar experience.
As soon as old boy finally fucking like stopped resisting what was going to happen, like once he was like finally like, shit, okay, I don't want to do this. I know what can happen, what's going to happen, but I have to do it. And he fucking makes that trek, drinks the old water, drinks the old fucking baby worm juice. Fucking yeah, when he gets about what the moment for me was when he goes in front of all those people and talks to them, and you feel like you feel the switch. It's like once you feel the power has kind of changed him, and like he now, like, especially once he realizes he's part Harkonnen, and like has that confrontation with his mother, and when he's speaking with the people, you just feel he's kind of just, all right, I've turned into like I've changed from this like dude who's just wants to help the Fremen be them, to being like, all right, it's fucking go time. We're taking this out. You're like all he doesn't. You can tell he's still got like him in there. Like he hasn't completely bought into the hype. He hasn't completely bought into his own hype yet, where he's just like where he doesn't want to kill Stilgar, and like so he puts on that more threatening front and starts calling everybody out, and like, but that scene there when he does that's when I like you, I was sold. I was like, yep, here it is.
To be fair, maybe like devil's advocate, do you think any of us, just real quick, let's take a temperature here, do you think that any of us, if we went through a similar experience of awakening to
We were with that
prescience
Hatterack.
and fucking we're like going through a Kwisatz Haderach like puberty, do you think any of
Yeah.
us would keep our heads and not have a little bit
No.
of a moment of like, oh shit,
No.
I'm a big boy?
No. And like I said, like he hasn't at that point completely gone off the deep end yet. He's still mindful of certain things. Like he refuses to kill Stilgar. Like that was a big one, was like, because they're like, no, if you want to lead, you have to do this. If he would have kind of given in completely, like he wouldn't have cared and would have just done it. but he still was holding on to that. And you could tell obviously he was still holding on to, the stuff with Chani too, and like he hasn't completely fucking bought the farm yet or whatever.
I got that. Yeah, I can piggyback on that a little bit. Him and as a character from the first film, he's kind of following in his dad's wake a little bit, but in this film, he's finding his own path.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul's trying to play it really subtly and coy and be very humble, but Stilgar's like saying things like, he's so humble that totally means he's our guy.
As it is written. You can just say that like
everything he does
as it is written.
Yeah,
it's become the meme of the movie. Is that like everything Paul does? Stilgar's just like, well, see,
it was
that's
all
him
as written. Like this is him. Like, and we'll get into the as written thing because I have some fun little tie-ins with the concepts of a lot of how this film was shot and also the story, how it reflects other things. But
like a lot of
Paul,
what you were saying too with Paul is you were saying that it was like his kind of trying to find him coming into his own. Part of that is he wants to be his own person, and he's actively fighting against this prophecy and the whatever for a majority of this movie, where he's like, no, I don't. I know the dangers of this, like, fanaticism, this religious fanaticism. I know what's going to happen if this happens. I don't want this to happen.
It's not real, dude.
Yeah, I just want the Fremen to, take control of their thing and be themselves, whatever. I don't want this. This is bad, whatever. But his duty ultimately overtakes his kind of ethics of the situation or what he wants.
Yeah, the fulfillment of the prophecy too. There's a lot of different boxes you got to check before all that happens. Like he's checking some of these boxes up until the point where he drinks the water, and then that's when the prophecy starts to really kick in, because for one, Chani helps revive him back. Like he's basically just like comatose after drinking from it. He's like, I'm gone. Like we can say goodbye to Paul now. But then Chani kind of helps, ease that and bring him back, which was very reflective of, things we've seen also in, Romeo and Juliet and things like, they've definitely taken that aspect of like the Matrix even. Remember when Trinity says like, oh, you can't be dead because, I love you and things like that. And then wakes Neo up and he becomes the one after that. So it's definitely familiar, that idea of the woman helping him.
He obviously uses a lot of, classical religious imagery from stuff as well, right? Mm-hmm. Stuff that will ring true for like, oh yeah, this makes sense that this is tied to
Lazarus or just
religious.
Christ
on the
rising.
On the third day, he rose, dude. And on the
He's
fourth
Messiah,
day,
dude.
he came in riding on a fucking big ass worm, brother.
But the idea, the cool, interesting concept of Dune as a whole is not just these characters, but Herbert making them pawns in this grand scope of like, the
manufactured Messiah.
Yeah,
prophecy's not real, dude.
They talk about the Missionaria Protectiva or whatever, where like those seeds of thought and processes of the one, or these Kwisatz Haderach, all these random prophetic visions are seeded by this Missionaria Protectiva. Like, here, you have to believe this, because we all have to play a part in this tapestry that we're weaving. So they're doing all these things to like feed the Fremen these ideas of this prophetic Messiah and things like that. But to the ends of this golden path that he's on, that he's trying to find this narrow path through, after he drinks that water of life, like you know that he must have seen his death. He must have seen
Yep.
a lot of things that he knows he can't fulfill. But so then he's
A lot
like,
of things that
I
could
have to
kill
just
his-
I have to just fulfill my duty now because I've seen too much. I just have to stick to this path, and he knows what's written for him, I guess.
What he sees is the the famine from the Holy War and all that stuff, and
Yeah, he
he's
sees the jihad.
resigned to his fate, essentially.
It's officially called Muad'Dib's Jihad, and it kills
Yeah.
Billions.
They use that word a lot in the
60
book.
billion people. It sterilizes 90 planets, kills like hundreds of religions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it doesn't help the spice production, because that's the big thing. Like, spice is like the thing of life. Like, it helps him see, it helps people travel, it like helps the spacing guild and things like that. Like, it has all these properties that you need to have, but like Stilgar wants it to be the paradise
You
of
don't need to have it. It is just a substance that happens to exist, and because it happens to exist, it has become a linchpin, and it has become so heavily monopolized that people are so dependent on it, and the economy and so many systems are so dependent on it that you are now like, yeah, it's just dependent on it. Like, if it goes away, everything fucking gets disrupted.
exactly what I'm saying, because Stilgar
100%.
Stilgar wants to follow somebody that brings them to the promised land, or like a grace, a paradise where there's green fields, because Dune used to be full of green fields, or he wants to bring it back to its glory, but that in turn takes away the spice. So it's like you're getting rid of something that's a necessity for a lot of interstellar travel and things like that, just so you can have like a paradise. So
They
it's
don't realize that
the effects
the
that it can have.
realization of their dream of this paradise on Arrakis is also the realization of the elimination of every single thing that they believe in.
Exactly. So that's what I think is an interesting aspect of what Frank Herbert is saying, of like a messiah figure, is like, if you follow a messiah to this promised land, you might get a lot more cons than pros in this the eventualities.
Yep.
And that's
It's a
hopefully
lot of
what
absolute,
Denis is going to try to do is show that story.
it's a lot of absolute power corrupts absolutely type situations, and like obviously the dangers of how religion can be used to manipulate people. A lot of ecological things in there too.
Being
big
dependent on
theme.
a certain mineral, or like
Mhm.
oil,
Kinda like
or
oil.
whatever.
Yep.
So whoever what's the saying that whoever owns the spice owns the
Whoever
universe?
controls the spice controls the universe.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Arrakis used to be, like he said, used to be covered in green and plants and trees and grass and water and stuff. And then at some point, the sand trout got introduced to the planet and started, and like were compatible with the environment and started their cycle. And what the sand trout do is they search out moisture, and they block off huge like deposits of moisture and just like suck them dry. And then they do that to the entire planet. And then eventually the sand trout grow up and become worms. And when the worms digest, they poop out spice. And when they die, they become spice. And that is how you get the fucking melange, my dude.
Oh yeah, dude.
See, the world building of this film got me more interested in seeking out, people talking about the interconnectivity of these different factions of people, and all these different houses they're called, and things like that, and the conniving and like the backstabbing and all these different relationships they have. Just the world building in this film brought me to be like, who are these people and what are their relationship to each other? Because once Paul finds out he is a Harkonnen, he's just like, well, I'm like, well, I got to know more about what the issue is there, or how that came about, and I want to know more about that and what that means in the grand scope of
And he's
maybe
just like,
the prophecy, you know?
I like too that he's just like, well, I'm a Harkonnen. Guess it's time to do things like a Harkonnen. And you're like, oh
Yeah,
shit, dude.
guess it's time to be a Harkonnen since I am one.
Yeah, he's like,
Well,
he's in his blood.
well, you look at it too. It's the duality of Paul too, where he's, you know, part of one of the more beloved houses, right? The just like they're it's one of the things the Emperor hated how, you know, beloved the Duke was and all that shit. So from like one of the good houses, the best, you know, house, and then like the worst, like most evil house, right? And
Yeah,
both of those
different
make up,
sides of the spectrum there.
yep, make up Paul, right? So he's got all the good and all the bad in him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as it's written, you know,
It's
it needs to
it's
be. This must be. This must be why he's
it's
the Messiah.
it's like the most
But
direct mixture that he could get. Like half from his mother is pure Harkonnen, half from his father is pure Atreides, and like
yep,
it's interesting to it's always been interesting to me that Bene Gesserit are like um they have such
puppet
supreme
masters.
control. Yeah, like well yeah, like they have their like conniving like plans and everything like that, but their powers are very much like they can have such control over their nerves that they can like
Hmm.
individually flex certain muscles in their body and just do all these crazy physical things. So like Jessica talks about like, yeah, oh, we had a baby and I decided I was going to have a boy instead of a girl.
Yep,
I just can control that in my body. And like that's what Bene Gesserit can do, and that's just interesting.
which
So if
yeah, and
you
she
would
wasn't
think that
supposed to do that as a no-no.
yeah, she wasn't supposed to do that. She wasn't supposed to let it have. She wasn't supposed to make a decision with her lady parts.
Well,
Hmm.
that's the thing. She chose love over the duty of the Bene Gesserit because she cared about Leto. Like she's like, I love this man. He wants a son. He wants lineage. He wants, you know, his
Right.
progeny like fulfilled. So it's like I think she was in the right. Like I'm always interested in characters that are honor bound but like deviate from that just for the sake
Right.
of somebody else. Like they're being selfless. And that was like that's cool because you can still have this interplay with like fulfilling this prophecy and things like that, and kind of shoving it in the Bene Gesserit's face a little bit because I
Right.
think they're there for themselves and nothing more.
Oh yeah.
Like they're just
The
telling
whole
people,
the whole
commanding people.
situation, so they have, yeah, the whole situation is just so they can have control.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? They've just basically fucked the galaxy so they can have control.
In Children of Dune, Jessica makes a reappearance as a character, and she basically goes and is like becoming a tutor to the grandson of Emperor Shaddam, the Christopher Walken's character in this movie,
Yeah.
and he's not like a bad guy, but he's like on the opposing side to Paul and all these other and like his whole faction
Yeah.
and stuff. And it's just funny because there's this whole scene of him being like, you can train me to be a Bene Gesserit, and she's like, yeah, I can teach you all this stuff. She teaches him all this stuff, and he's going through his graduation, and people are watching, and then all of a sudden at the end of the graduation, people are like, wait, no, fuck, no, but they're too late, and the book is funny. It's like, and they were too late. He was now fully Bene Gesserit, and like she was training him, yes, but she was also brainwashing him so that when he said his vows, he was just going to be completely loyal to like that cause, and
Yeah.
yeah. So there,
That's hilarious. I love like because Denis talked about in an interview how one of the one of the reasons why like the Mentats weren't featured as much was like he made a choice in his adaptation to focus more on the Bene Gesserit and make it more of a Bene Gesserit story, which I think was smart because then it really um, it focused all that attention on their machinations. You know what I mean? um, and really kind of put them into focus as, kind of antagonists, as opposed to kind of, when you read the book, it's all kind of, you're spread around to all these different, situations and places. And yeah, I don't know how I was going to end that, but
No, I get it.
Well,
Like it's too much
you're
to focus your attention on when it's like, oh, what are Mentat's true like directive? And if you're
Yeah.
just having like, I can see how that makes sense. Where it's like Bene Gesserit are coming off as the antagonists in a lot of these situations, but once you get like the Reverend Mother of Lady Jessica, like when she takes upon, the all the memories and the sorrow from a lineage of different Reverend Mothers, she becomes more of like the antithesis of the Bene Gesserit matron, that other woman. Like, just we can have these telepathic fights in our head and things like that. And when she said that in the film, like, you're on the wrong side, and then the other lady was like, there aren't no sides. Like I think she doesn't believe that, or I refuse to believe that she doesn't want to be on the winning side, because they have been in control for a long time, and maybe she's just scared of Lady Jessica's power now, and also like her unborn child Aaliyah, like just also being a Reverend Mother in the womb. I found that very captivating.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was another thing. The perception, I think this was happening before he drank the water, but like he was always envisioning a woman walking ahead of him. And you see hints that it could be Aaliyah, it could be Chani, it could be his mom. Like all these different people. It could even be Princess
Leading them
Aruna?
into the famine. Leading into the
Irulan.
Yeah.
It could have been her too. Like, but who do you guys think that could have been?
Well, you see that it's his mom's face after he
I
drinks.
believe.
Is that what we're supposed to believe? Because
water.
I saw
After he drinks
Irulan.
water, they show her walking through. Where they have like the people that are suffering from the famine and whatnot.
Yeah.
From the Holy War, and they're just walking. She turns her head to the side, and it's clearly Jessica.
That was just one shot, but then there were other, other visions
But you don't
that he
see
was
her
having.
face otherwise. You don't see her face otherwise, though, of the lady that's leading him.
That's what I'm thinking that Denis wants us to speculate on, is like, who is this woman? It could be anyone. It could be a single person, but in some instances, he's following these women, and they're a big point. They're a big key to this story.
Yeah,
that's what I think the message was.
Showing Jessica is, pushing and moving, making moves to pull Paul into all this. But yeah, I don't know if maybe it means more. I just know that I just remember you see him having that vision, and you never quite see her until after he drinks the water of life, and then you see the woman turn her head, and it's Jessica. And then that's all I remember anyway from that.
But then there's also like a continuation where he actually speaks to his sister from the future.
That's a different location though. Like she's like standing by like a bay or something, by like water or something.
Well, that's when the water comes back to Dune. Like it's it's coming back in. And that's way far into the future, but those visions could be him seeing the future and things like that, and it inevitably could have been his sister, because
maybe.
I mean, that aspect of it where he sees the past, present, and future all at the same time, and knows what is to become of him. It's portrayed in the movie very well, like how he's sitting by water, or he's sitting by that little pond just by himself, kind of just like in reflection of what he just did and what just happened to him. And he's just kind of like in a meditative trance, kind of gesturing with his hands, like the different paths and different times, and then he kind of like cuts it down the middle. He's like, there's a narrow path through I could see now, and like that when he becomes awoken, he gets woke a little bit. He's like, I know what I got to do. That's when I started really feeling for him, and I was like, I'm on board with this guy. I know that he's destined to cause a lot of struggles and hardships, and a lot of bad would come from this, but also hopefully a progeny of well-intended individuals, hopefully. That hopefully help the universe get back to like some new way of life.
Not have everybody be at like a. They don't talk about it in the movies too much. They touch on it in the second, in this one where they like go and discover like the cache of atomics.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a basic general stalemate between a lot of the great houses where they're all like, yeah, we all have like a shit ton of nukes and we could launch them at each other at any given moment and destroy each other, but then mutually assured destruction, and then there's heavy like penalties for the survivors.
Right. Just like the real world.
Just like the real world.
Anything else about the movie you guys want to talk about? We talked about the spectacle and things like that.
I really, really liked that we finally got Gurney Halleck to fucking play the balisette. He sang and he played the balisette. Yeah, I was happy.
Yeah, he played a song about pissing in the still suit. That was kind of cute. I like that.
Content did not matter to me. I was hoping when Josh Brolin was cast, that's the first thing I think of whenever I am like thinking about who would be cast as Gurney Halleck. I'm like, could I see them doing a little song?
Yeah, you got Patrick Stewart doing one, so you got to get
Peace too.
Yeah, Josh Brolin's got to do one. We got to see Paul ride the sandworm, the big Shahalood. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's too big.
Yeah,
that was pretty good. That was like the cinematic moment that a lot of people were waiting for. Is like seeing Paul stand up on the worm.
Paul knifing the Baron was pretty fun.
Can we talk about how Stilgar is like the best part of this movie?
Yeah, I was gonna say that he came off as like one of my favorite characters of this film. Like he carried a lot of the reason why we're wanting to follow Paul as an audience. Like, why should I care about this kid? It's like, oh, Stilgar really believes in him, and he's getting all these other people on board. And he's like the comic relief the whole time. And
I was gonna say, there's a lot of times where
is one thing, but his comedic timing is fucking great.
Well, and his like chaotic nature.
Even when the comedic timing meets the fanatic nature of him at the same time is always great, because it was like I was saying, that got memed so much, where it was just like every time when Paul would do something and it'd cut over to Stilgar, and I'd be like, well, he's gonna say some fucking shit about, that it's part of the prophecy. That's what it is. It was hilarious.
Very true.
So I went to this with my mother. She watched the first one. She was very much Austin Butler fan after the Elvis movie. She's a big Elvis lady. And we watched the first one. I rewatched it and watched it with her like a few weeks ago. And I went to this, and she was like, oh, Austin Butler was creepy, right? It's icky. But then at the end of the movie, she was just like, she knew that going in, that he was gonna be a bad guy, but like, not as, I don't think she expected him to be as like wantonly fucking violent and crazy. But at the end of the movie, she's like, no, that's the end of it? I was like, yep. And they're like, they're gonna do another one? And I was like, well, I mean, yeah, but probably not for a while. I was like, I mean, that's not how I like thought it was gonna end. And I was like, oh no, yeah, this is not a happy like hero's journey movie. This is a lot of not great things happening. Like,
Right.
Even the book ends on like a very strange note where like, yeah, Paul wins. He fights Fade Rotha. He does a couple more things to basically like eliminate the Emperor as a threat and secure his victory, and then
but it
they
doesn't feel good.
they like very quickly broach the topic of him marrying Irulan, and then it's just over.
Yeah.
It's like there feels like there's no ending to it, but it ends just like very abruptly.
Well, yeah, and it's not even just that it just ends. It's the you don't feel like Paul wins, but you don't really feel good about it. You know what I mean? Like you see the bad part of what's happening in his side of things.
There's a jihad that's going to happen in his name, dude, and
It was like,
it's
oh,
not
this
good.
is
It's really
yeah.
not good.
It's not like it's not the end of Star Wars or whatever. Where it's like, oh, these are clearly the good guys.
The good
and this
guys
is
won. They get medals.
Yep. This is like, oh, I don't know if I should be happy or not that this is happening. Is this good? Is this bad? This doesn't feel good. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Which is why I like it. So
Well,
it's not.
here we can
It's
go.
not clear.
We can kind of deviate a little bit because I wanted to discuss, the idea of it is written, or as it is as written, and the prophetic things of different cultures, and even the kind of the anti-hero's journey, sort of, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you guys seen Lawrence of Arabia recently?
No.
Okay.
No.
I would suggest you guys watch that film after seeing Dune Part 2, because it is very much the same story. Okay? Like, just go with me a little bit. Like, it does deviate because T.E. Lawrence was a real guy. But he did go help like these guerrilla fighters in the I forgot who it was, but it was they were fighting the Turks, and he is this English guy that just goes. He's fighting with the Arabs, and they're like taking out trains and like doing this like guerrilla warfare type stuff. So he's like a guy out of his element, thrust into this desert world where he has to fight these opposing forces, these Ottoman Turks and things like that. And he learns the ways of this culture, and he learns there's a scene of him in the film walking on sand and like doing a little dance on the sand and
Riding a sandworm.
kind of. The sandworms here are just camels, but there's a character in it. I don't know if it's Omar Sharif. You guys are aware of that actor?
Yep.
So Omar Sharif plays this like brother type character of this culture he's hanging out with, and he is definitely like the Stilgar, because he's saying things like, "It is written." Like every choice that Lawrence does, like he goes back and helps this person that's stranded in the desert, but once he brings the person back from being lost, the person then gets in a fight with another guy and is eventually killed. So was that written in fate that Lawrence was going to help this guy get free from the desert, but inevitably the guy dies anyway? So it's like this conflicting idea of like this prescience, or like when we talk about like this way that fate is described in even Dune, and people knowing their path. Does it affect does it even change anything in the long run? Like you do all these things, are things going to be destined to go full circle and start over again? Like, are these things going to keep reoccurring?
I can tell you.
But that's just that's just the the Lawrence of Arabia I'm talking about. And just the shots, I can tell there's so many different shots that when I watch Lawrence of Arabia, I'm like, oh, didn't he totally borrowed that, like to shoot this? Because the way that it's shot, David Lean is the director of Lawrence of Arabia. He shot it in such a brilliant scope, like it's so vast and there's so many beautiful shots in the film that I'm like, oh yeah, that they totally took a page out of Lawrence of Arabia when they shot Dune. Because I think they even shot it in like the same, geographically, like they probably shot it in the same space as they shot Lawrence of Arabia. I think it was like in Jordan or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say if you have the time, sit through it. It's a very long movie too.
Yeah.
And there's even an intermission, but it's a good story, and Peter O'Toole is amazing in it. And I see a lot of, I don't know if it's been discussed a lot, but I see a lot of Paul and Lawrence reflections of each other, because there is a turning point in the film. I'm not going to get into it too much, but Lawrence doesn't drink from like camel piss and become awakened or anything. He just like he just has seen so much war and bloodshed that he just is more dangerous now, like after being through these hardships. And there's like, that's totally like when Paul has his turning point, his heel turn. It reminded me a lot of that in Lawrence of Arabia. So that's my spiel about that, because that's one of my favorite films. And it's a beautifully shot film and should be watched at least once a year. It's good. It's that good. Cinematic achievement. But yeah, what else do you guys have to say about Dune Part 2? Anything else?
I'm sad that
See it?
David Lynch did not have a cameo. Yes, see it.
Yeah, I would have David Lynch be the Emperor, other than Christopher Walken, maybe.
Oh, don't give him. He doesn't want a part that big. Just have him be like.
Well, even Christopher Walken wasn't that big. He had like, I don't know, how many, like 1 page of dialogue total in the film.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
He could do that. He did the ending of the Fabelmans. He could have done that.
I just want them to have like.
Yeah, but they had Cheetos.
I just want them to have like a flash to the future, in like Messiah, and like you just see Leto the Second all sandwormed out, and it's fucking David Lynch's face.
Ooh.
That's what I want. That's what I want.
Well, you could. Well, I don't know. That'd be interesting to like.
Well,
if you do flash forwards,
like,
you could have Kyle MacLachlan be like the old Paul, like the blind Paul.
Theoretically, you could have that could happen, Eric, because Leto has multitudes living within him of all kinds and thousands and millions, billions and billions of people.
Aliens. David Lynch in there too.
Yeah, maybe David Lynch is in there. If he's got like Attila the Hun, maybe he's got David Lynch.
Yeah.
If he's got
David the Lynch.
if he's got Alexander the Great and Columbus and
Got Columbo in there, dude.
Maybe he's got Columbo.
David the Lynch. David the Lynch. David the Lynch.
Just one more thing still going.
Before you go.
Before you leave the seat, Stilgar, could I have one more cup of the spiced coffee?
I love coffee.
My wife says I drink too much of it at home, so I try to get as much as I can out here on the job.
Yeah, final thoughts of Dune Part 2 is that maybe it's not as, hyped up as a lot of people are saying it is. It is not maybe one of the defining movies of the decade.
But it's really fucking good.
It's very good. It's very
performing
well
like
done.
a tentpole movie. It's just not being like viewed by everybody as one.
Yeah, and it's not like one of those, like we said, like defining films, like the first Star Wars or even like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. but it is very well done as a thing that's been touted as unfilmable. It definitely is.
Yep.
And the story that Denis is telling, we didn't really get into the deviations from the book, like the idea of Chani having like be the final shot of her like leaving Paul and what that means for Messiah. They could deviate a Tish from the book and tell her story a little bit. But yeah, overall, the film is very well done, very well acted. An interesting story, telling a story of a tragic hero, or telling a story of the fall from grace and things like that.
Yeah.
Fun action, cool set pieces and things like that.
Fun worms.
Great worms.
Fun worm.
The worms.
A lot of worm.
Worms were a highlight. Other than
Yeah.
Stilgar riding a worm.
Today. And I was just like,
It's
like, there worms in there? I was like, of course there was. There was like, there's got to be like a handful of them. And then I started counting. I was like, wait, no. There's definitely more than like 3 or 5. There's like 10 worms in this bitch. It's about.
It's not often that you get a franchise where one of its defining characteristic is worms.
Yeah.
I know. And I've
It's like 7 to 10.
that
Month
idea
to
in
month.
itself is interesting. Like making a film based around this,
They made
this
worms cool.
poster of every Dune like thing is like a big sandworm, and
Yeah. Big old butthole mouth.
you can't talk about Dune without talking about big sandworms. So it's
No.
like you can't talk about like, I don't know, any other film having such a weird aspect to it, like a
Yeah.
sandworm or like even a piece of media.
Tremors.
This is not a critique or like negative about the film, but I do think it could have done with a little bit more of like a detached psychedelic aspect to it in a couple of moments where it was heavy in the melange. We had those like moments of vision and prescience or whatever you want to call it, but like I think I don't know. That
Makes
just
sense when you find out that Frank Herbert derived a lot of inspiration from his own experiences with psilocybin. So
yeah, like just having read the books in like a fairly short span of time, it's just very, very prominent how many times people just get fucking bonked
Just
out
be
of their
tipping,
mind
dude.
on spice. Yeah, like
the Peters are tipping quite a bit.
it is more than like political upheaval or the deaths of major characters or changing of a location. People just tipping off their fucking gourds onto the melange is like the inciting incident for a lot of stuff in this series.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is the spice of life.
Peters be tipping.
The spice must
that
flow,
should be
my
the-
dude.
The Teters must tip, my dude.
Well, those are our thoughts. I hope everybody had a chance to listen to what we had to say.
My teeters are tipping.
It was written.
Leave a comment
written.
below if you're tipping a little bit. Hit that like button if you're tipping too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, thanks for sticking around and having us digress on Dune Part 2. Maybe we'll come back for Part 3.
Whenever Messiah happens.
Well, I think Denis said if he does do it, he's going to age the cast up a little bit more. So
Well,
that
yeah,
might be a
that-
bet.
They have to, yeah. Well, and he said he wants to take a break for a while, do something else before he goes back to the desert. So
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'll be here hanging
If
out
they
with
make
the
Messiah, they have to bring back Aquaman.
Duncan,
And
Idaho did. Yeah.
They need to remove his eyes and give him like multifaceted, like
remove Jason Momoa's
dodecahedron
eyes.
metal robot eyes,
Yeah.
and he has to be in a relationship with Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Those are
they're a bit of a power couple.
which need to happen for the next movie.
Yeah, Duncan hangs out for most of the books. He's like becomes
Oh yeah,
part of the main
he's
dude.
just there, dude. Duncan is he just keeps coming back, dude.
Yeah.
My man keeps coming back.
Oh man.
Oh man. Okay.
Dude, when
Thanks.
you see him in Dune, right away he goes, "My boy." I was like,
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Yeah, I had a lot of fun discussing this. Maybe we'll talk more about other Dune-related things. We didn't really talk about David Lynch's Dune, but maybe we can do a whole digression on just watching that.
I started reading this fascinating book,
Kaizen.
and it was
Kaizen
talking
Meister.
about the Kwisatz Haderach and Shai Hulud,
I love these words.
and I was getting just the first tingling of headache. But then I kept reading, and I thought, wow, he's painting such a world in my mind.
What does he say in Twin Peaks again? He's like, that reminds me of sausage. Not the links, not the patties.
Yeah, something about that.
Dune reminds me of Doom. Finally, goodbye. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Not finally. You could have ended that at any time that you choose on the edit. You can. I don't know if I'm still talking or not, but you could have ended this much earlier.
Fear is the mind killer.
You are still talking.
I must not fear. Fear
Still
is
talking?
the mind killer. Fear
Still-
is the
still
little
recording.
death. Fear is the little obliteration. Fear, I will look inside myself. I will turn and I will face my fear. I will let it pass over and through me. And when I turn and look, only I will remain. I don't remember the litany against fear, dude. It's long. It's fucking long, dude.
It's basically
fucking
just the Green
long, dude.
Lantern oath.
It is.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
I honestly would not be surprised if there was some inspiration there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. See, Green Lantern and Alan Scott was in the
He's doing
40s.